Hello, everyone. Welcome to the weekly technical steering committee from LF Energy Project EVerest. Quickly have to show this antitrust policy since there might be competing parties in the room, so please behave. Yeah, so let's start with the agenda. You can basically jump over the entire agenda, what's EVerest section. If you watch the recording on YouTube, down below there will be jump marks. But anyway, let's quickly recap what's EVerest. So EVerest is one stack to charge them all. I really love this new slogan. The idea is we have one firmware for all kind of EV charging stations. We are part of the Linux Foundation EVerest, a Linux Foundation energy consortia of projects regarding the energy transition. We are basically the EV gateway with this. But also our project is quite large. The idea is there's many different parties trying to get something from the EV market, and so many players trying to build things for EV charging. So the industry is super fragmented, many isolated solutions, everything is inconsistent, and we think there are challenges which can be fixed by open source, by unifying the software stack. We can fix pure customer experiences, and we can fix inefficiencies in software development. EVerest is a stack talking to cars, power electronics, solar, grid, humans, clouds, and can basically orchestrate it and modify it in many different ways, so we can cover many different use cases. Yeah, so here you can see there's a lot of protocols already in or in the making. And the end of the idea is we're not adding new protocols in terms of we're not inventing new. The idea is just to cover all existing protocols out there to have as a benefit from this just one central solution where, you know, this works with all the charging stations, all the cars, and we're compatible with everything. Yeah, quick advertisement blocks about hardware. So from Pionic's side, there is development kit for AC, there's a development kit or basically DC charging station also available. The DC one is quite tiny since it's USB power bank powered, but it can do more than 1,000 volts, so you can really do entire DC charging sessions, just very slow ones. So if you're interested in some hardware to playing around, getting started, just give us a ping. The left one is also available as open hardware. So the idea is this is not a mass market product. It just helps you testing ideas, testing cars, testing whatever, so for your engineering needs. But we're also working with many more hardware partners: Phytech, Texas Instruments, ChargeByte, Lumiseal, Steed Studio, and there's way more to come. Unfortunately, can't talk about all of them yet. In total, we have a huge ecosystem of partnerships with standardization bodies, research entities, hacker organizations and companies, component suppliers, and there are some new ones sometimes on the slide, like vendors as SCU. I think we hadn't had them on the slide last time. Charging station OEM, so people who really build chargers, and there's a lot in the making. Typically, you can only announce them a year later, so be surprised. And yeah, also those who operate charging stations for a living, really looking into EVerest, since this enables them to build on top of existing chargers and customize that to their needs across brands. So what's new? And here I would like to hand over to Holger from Qwello, who is a new partner in the ecosystem. Well, not that new, but they're about to contribute something big.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for having us here from Qwello. My name is Holger. I'm the CTO. I would like to talk really quickly about what we at Qwello, what we do, what we plan to do with EVerest, and where we are. So this is actually the slide about our company. So we at Qwello, we are a CPO, so we are a charge point operator. We only do AC charging, and we're active in 6 countries. We're roughly 60 employees right now, so we are not super small. We've been much smaller just 2 years ago. Our main hunting ground is the inner cities, and we do this with our own hardware and our own app. Our largest deployment right now is in Sweden. There we are the market lead in terms of numbers of sessions and the numbers of stations. And we are here and interested in EVerest because in 2024, we want to run all of our chargers on EVerest. Obviously, since we are a CPO, we are aiming for high uptime and low bug software development, and we're thinking in a time horizon of at least 10 years, so our devices will be in use for a long time. So we actually do a lot of stuff in Rust, because Rust is a programming language that kind of promises a low bug software and is very useful in deployments that you want to operate for a long time. And since EVerest cannot do Rust yet, we are interested in changing that. On the right, I also brought a picture of our current flagship hardware and an idea why we actually benefit from building our own hardware and why we really like to be able to control the software in it. So I will not go through all the features, but interesting to mention is number 3, we have parking sensors in our stations, which actually are hard to express with some of the open protocols out there. Like the idea that you know that something is in front of your station and it can't be used, but it will never charge, is hard to express in some protocols. So it's nice if you can add custom software on that. And then the second thing I want to point out is number 7, our long integrated cable, which is actually, we can do both charging with the socket or with the cable, and being able to detect and switch between those tools requires some custom software. And of interest, we have doing contactless payment now for a very long time already, for years and years. And that actually also required a lot of custom software. It gets better now, but there's one other reason why we're running our own software. Okay, so next slide, please.
Sorry for the interruption on the visual. Next slide.
No worries. Okay, so why do we want Rust support? So I teased it already, right? We really want to write production-worthy EVerest modules, right? So the goals are here. We want low boilerplate, very high type safety. We want to make illegal states not expressible as much as possible. We want to make many bugs, for example, data races, impossible. We want an idiomatic development experience, so it should feel really nice for Rust developers. We want the perfect interoperability with all other EVerest modules, and we want to support 100% of the features that the EVerest framework provides. So basically, the idea is that if you want to build a product around EVerest, if you want to build something that runs in production, Rust should be a very preferred choice of yours, right? That's the goal. So an explicit non-goal is also here that we don't want to use Rust to build explorative or debug modules for the framework itself, because it goes against some of the other stuff that we want up there, right? Like basically, we want to make it hard to make mistakes when you write an EVerest module in Rust. And that also means that we will take away some of the flexibility that might be desirable if you want to write like a module to debug the framework. So next slide. The current status is the first experimental code is soon to be merged. It actually got approved this morning, but it's not yet merged in. It has very little. Right now, it only it lacks support for module configuration, for variables, and it doesn't do code gen yet. It also lacks documentation, as experimental code does. And it is default to off on normal builds. So it will not disturb you if you want to use keep using EVerest like you're doing right now. The next step here is to finish the features and to write the first internal modules within Qwello to figure out the interfaces, if it's well designed and if it works for the use cases we desire it to be using. And we are seeking for contributors or for people who are just interested in that and want to pair and like play around in creating a module. So I am available for pairing sessions if somebody wants to try it out. We would be very excited if we're not the only people who use Rust around EVerest. And with that, I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Holger. This is really exciting news. And just to put this into the perspective, EVerest itself already supports C++, JavaScript, and Python modules. So this would be the 4th officially supported language. Every module can be in a different language. So far, we use for all production code C++ 17. So like I would say it's as close as you can get with C++ to type safetiness and whatever. We decided back then to do that this way in order to support all the existing C++ developers out there who don't speak Rust. But I really, really love that Rust is now also on the horizon. And JavaScript and Python, we just support for, let's say, debug or experimental modules. And you can always mix one module in Python, one in Rust, one in C++. That's totally possible due to our framework. So thanks for that. And yeah, looking also forward to see you next week on the summit, and maybe we can explore things there further. Yeah, I would say this is on Kai or Robert, who would like to cover OCPP.
I can do that. So last week we were with 2 teams of Bionics at the OCA Plugfest. We were joined by a company we can't name yet that is also working on OCP 2.0.1. So basically it was 3 teams using EVerest testing there. We totally did 27 tests. Kai was doing the 1.6 tests, the other company and me together with Pete did 2.0.1 tests. Normal charging operation works flawlessly already in 2.0. We really only found some minor things in the more corner cases. We might not report correct message sequences yet on trigger message. We are missing some reason fields that are still fixed that we need to really fill with the correct values. But normal operation was flawless, which was really nice to see. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think I can take it from here. Yeah, just a small update in preparation for the Plugfest. We added some minor new functionality to libOCPP. For 1.6, we now have the possibility to support custom configuration keys, and there's also an example module in EVerest where you can use those. And whilst doing that, we also added the support to access custom and non-custom configuration keys from the EVerest side as well. For OCPP 2.0.1, we have now support for I think most of the offline behavior and offline transaction, and the device model database will now get initialized automatically during build, so you don't have any more manual steps that you have to take there. But this is something that will probably change a lot in the coming weeks and months as well.
So continuing with bidirectional ISO for DC.
I think I can cover that as well. So one of our colleagues implemented the new SAE protocol standard for bidirectional DC power transfer, which is basically a extension of the ISO 15118-2 to support like negative values, and we have achieved this by extending our ISO 15118-2 support with like these 2 new services here, and supporting negative physical value types in the appropriate messages.
Yeah, and this is kind of an officially fresh US standard, and we think there will be quite some OEMs over there supporting that, because it's quite a low-hanging fruit compared to the Dash 20. Yeah, but let's continue with Dash 20. Robert, you want to cover this?
Sure. This is about our contribution, the new EXI codec, which also covers Dash 20, and we've made a great step forward in the project. Is that all known issues have been resolved? We're basically able to encode and decode all types of messages from all these known protocols. We especially had to put a lot of work into plug and charge. There's a lot of a little bit more difficult structures in there, but this is very essential. We've heard for customers that they'll be using the Dash 20 for that. There are some GitHub issues opened both by Bionics and other members of the EVerest project and by externals, and we had managed to close all of these. Next slide, please. So we've still got some things to do. We're currently working on a fragment coder. This is required for actually creating the plug and charge signatures, where you encode only a part of a message and into an EXI stream, and then build a hash over that and use that either to transmit it or to verify it. That's an essential function for plug and charge, which is missing right now. And the second one is that in order to reduce the code size significantly, that we do a loop implementation for large arrays, so that, for example, for arrays with the size of 1024, we don't get 1024 times the same code block. Also quite essential. And working on those right now and hoping to finish that pretty soon. So we've got, as we've hit sort of a milestone, let's talk about the opens. This is stuff which is sort of on the roadmap or is open for the community. So, which means ChargeByte won't necessarily be doing these things. There's still more code size optimizations possible. If anybody wants to talk about those, we can do that. We haven't implemented all types of filtering you could do to reduce the number of messages in the codec. For example, if you want to really strip down the code size. We haven't done any testing on ACDP and WPT, and it's not really in focus. Not sure if anybody's going to use that. The code compiles correctly and it looks correct, but haven't actually checked any streams against content for that. There were some suggestions which often have come, and already some contributions, that the schema files, which are not actually freely available, but they are, you can find them on the internet, that they could be automatically downloaded. Because due to license terms, we cannot provide them along with the code generator. We're still missing some sort of compile infrastructure so that we make it that the code we produce is a proper library in source code terms. So for CMake, the CMake lists for .text, for example, it's not too difficult, but hasn't been done yet. And those who've integrated previously have just done this manually. We don't have a release process for the actual source code of this codec. So right now you find the generator. Actually, we should probably have some sort of way of saying now the generator has done another step and the code it produces has changed. It deserves a tag, and the produced code, the cbv2g, gets a version. We haven't done that yet either, so we're still sort of in the beta phase for software integration. And in the future, and these and other things which people come up with will be driven by future project demands at ChargeByte or from EVerest, depending on who will pick them up. From the ChargeByte point of view, and from what we need, we're sort of almost finished, and we'll be fixing some stuff in the future as we have time for those.
About version and tagging, I think as soon as it's, let's say, in productive use with an EVerest, it gets versionized and tagged along the way with our monthly releases anyway, I would assume. So
yes, but just so that we have a process going from a generator change to a source code change as well, for example, that we can align that and do it properly. So our team hasn't looked at versioning or how it's used in EVerest at all yet, but I'm sure it can be done pretty easily. Yes. Okay, and just as a summary, as we've always said, any kind of feedback is welcome. We're still, I said, there's some opens still for streams which don't happen to work. We currently don't have any. And for community participation, we'll be opening up the GitHub issues a little bit more to tag some opens as easy first task. I think it's one of those labels GitHub offers you, or just stuff which could be done or is nice to have, so that perhaps others can pick it up if they want to do more contribution as well.
Thank you, Moritz. So I would say back to Kai, back to Framework.
Yeah, since we saw that on the mailing list a couple of weeks ago, that some people have issues with RPC timeouts using the admin panel. A proper fix for that will be deployed later, because it kind of involves making the config parsing a little bit more faster, so it doesn't even happen. But as like a temporary fix, I would say, you can now configure, at least in the next release, you can configure the RPC timeout yourself, and the admin panel can then also request the RPC timeout from EVerest, so it can set its client-side timeouts accordingly. You can modify this by adding like the following settings block into your config. What's important here is that you can, at the moment at least, only set this in the original config that you pass to the manager, because the settings block is actually not augmented with these user configs that we also support. But that's also something that we'll address in the future, but will not make it into this release.
Talking about releases.
Yeah, exactly. Talking about releases. There's just a few things that haven't been mentioned yet. We'll probably have the Rust support in there as well, but we did a refactor on our powermeter interface. I already mentioned the OCPP changes. There are now some additional arrow types in the board support package interface. We kind of have alternatives for the JavaScript dummy auth modules if you in C++, if you rather want to use them. There's now a CMake option called EVerest include modules that you can use to specify only the exact modules that you actually want to build, which can be quite useful since our list of modules has grown quite significantly. There's already been an option that was called EVerest exclude modules, but since there's more and more modules coming, that is not that great to keep updated. And what will probably also make it is a new EVSE security module for use in libOCPP that will ease the certificate handling usage in EVerest. Right now, it basically also only has file system support for storing and retrieving certificates, but this is a point where it can then be extended in the future for other kinds of secure backend storage. We'll also release a library along with that called libEVSE security, and I think this will be released within the next couple of days.
Thank you, Kai. So much about the news. So what's next on our roadmap? So first of all, we have at Pionix next week a big summit. We got way more demand than we expected. Next time we will plan bigger, but for this time we unfortunately fully booked. I mean, maybe we can squeeze in one person, but it's luckily many companies will be there. We will report on the next TSC, what happened. So nice gathering of all the developers of a couple of car OEMs, everyone working or planning to work with EVerest. And I think there will also be quite some nice announcements on that summit. And yeah, looking forward to see. I think basically everyone here in the meeting will be there. So that will be quite fun. About the roadmap, what will happen later after the summit? So for this year, it's mainly about OCPP 2.0 and C+ and ISO 1511 8-20. I will come to that on the next slide. In principle, we're now discussing with a couple of potential partners how and when do we do the Asian communication standards like CHAdeMO, GBT, Xiaoji. That's still TBD. If someone is interested to join that implementation, please ping us. Advanced energy management, better load balancing, better solar integration, also more concept for dynamic pricing is on our agenda for next year. We got public funding for that. Remote connections that you basically can run EVerest on several systems. I think this is even part of a commercial project. EEBus is part of a research grant, IEEE 2030.5, OpenADR, maybe server-side OCPP clients. You basically can put other charging stations kind of as master slave into the energy management of EVerest, so you can daisy chain charging stations, even non-EVerest ones, is in the discussion. Not sure if it really happens next year. Yeah, and continuously we're looking for new drivers for new hardware modules. There's always something going on, and there's a couple of them already in the making. And if there's anyone listening who builds hardware modules which end up in chargers, why not joining EVerest, build drivers for the hardware, and make better sales into our really rapidly growing community. So there will be quite some announcements of new partners we're currently lining up over the next months. OCPP timeline. Kai, do you want to cover it yourself? I think this is your domain, or Robert?
Sure. I mean, right now, as we said in the past already, OCPP 1.6 is fully implemented and tested. During the Plugfest, we only found some minor issues, so we expect this to be almost done. Other than that, the OCPP 2.01 basic implementation is ongoing, and the goal is still to have the core implementation done this year, and also work on some things regarding OCPP 2.1 already, to have that ready when the standard drops sometime next year, probably. Yeah.
Thank you. ISO, you want to
Yeah, I can also say a few things for that. At the moment, we do have a tested and operational ISO 128-2 and DIN-SPEC 71-1 implementation. We have some bidirectional charging capabilities implemented. Like I mentioned earlier, we also have support now for the SAE -2 standard, and work is ongoing for a ISO 15118-20 implementation on our side, with most of the effort going into C++ based replacement, or C++ based implementation here.
Yeah, so this Joseph community-based edition was I mentioned as a temporary solution. We need that for the simulation side of the car, but maybe the EVerest side will never get implemented. We might even skip that step. Yeah, and I also just realized that the slide is not totally up to date. So we now announced that the SAE 2847 is out. And yeah, we just made it end of Q3. So yay, the timeline was accurate. So what else going on? Where can you meet us? Next week, Germany. Some weeks later, Valencia, Spain, at the Charon Festival. I will be at the Chinese International Importer Expo in Shanghai in beginning of November, and afterwards probably also in Shenzhen. We'll be on the Charon Festival in USA end of November. Beginning of December, I probably in Tokyo, and on the next festival from Charon in Singapore. End of the year, beginning of next year, sorry, we'll be in Las Vegas in the CES and eWorld Essen. So this is just the most important ones. And there's probably summer open source conferences already lining up. Yeah, next TSC will be 26th of October, so 4-ish weeks from now, same time again, and afterwards on YouTube. And you can join our weekly development call. I think last time we have been way more than 20 people. So those get really, really crowded meanwhile. A lot of tech is going on there every week, except next week because it's public holiday in Germany. And if you want to be updated about all these meetings, just subscribe to our mailing list. There's also quite some tech traffic going on, where you also get informed about all the recordings of this video and everything else what's going on in the community. And yeah, happy to talk to everyone who's listening to a recording. And let's dive into the discussion and see you on the recording or on live events.